Welcome to the deep dive. Settle in, folks, because we're about to jump headfirst into a stack of recent sources. Really interesting stuff today. We're looking at some, well, pretty dynamic and intense areas of public life. Think political fights, big legal cases, and of course the elections shaping things.
That's right. And our mission, really, is to pull out those crucial nuggets of knowledge for you. We want to give you the context, connect the dots, and, highlight some surprising facts that help you stay informed without getting totally overwhelmed. You'll see how things that seem separate, like news about maps and jobs numbers and court cases, actually weave together big themes: power, how laws get interpreted, the changing election landscape. So let's dive in.
Okay, let's kick things off where things are really hot right now, Texas. The whole redistricting battle there. Our sources say the political temperature is just boiling over. You're hearing about actual screaming and fist shaking. It's intense.
Yeah, and what's fascinating, or maybe predictable, is how much of it plays out as pure political performance. You've got Texas AG Ken Paxton, who, let's be honest, is clearly gunning for a promotion, maybe U.S. Senator, in this public fight with Beto O'Rourke.
Right. O'Rourke was fundraising initially for those quorum jumpers, the legislators who left the state, right?
Yeah, exactly. But then a court issued a restraining order, so he had to shift gears. Now it's about, fighting gerrymandering more generally.
And Paxton is, well, our sources say he's not happy. He's actually claiming O'Rourke violated that order with just, like, a couple sentences worth of speech.
Yeah, just a few words at a rally. And Paxton's pushing for O'Rourke's arrest. Actual jail time.
It sounds extreme, but the analysis we saw suggests something else might be going on. It suggests O'Rourke might actually love to be arrested.
Okay.
Seriously.
Right. After losing a couple of big races, the idea is maybe this makes him a kind of martyr, gets him back into the game.
Makes him the face of the anti-Paxton resistance. It really does feel like political theater, from both sides.
It certainly looks that way. I mean, Paxton gets to show he's owning the libs, and O'Rourke potentially gets a boost. But you have to ask, beyond the show, are there real strategic calculations here? What's the actual end game?
And Governor Greg Abbott's right in the middle of it, too. He was on CNN saying he could have turned 10 Democratic seats Republican, but he only did 5 because he's such a kind-hearted soul who loves democracy. You can almost hear the sarcasm in the source material.
And he promised on X Twitter, the platform formerly known as Twitter, to call special session after special session to get around Texas law limits.
And he joined Paxton in calling for O'Rourke's arrest, too. The whole thing's quite something.
It really is.
And speaking of performative politics playing out online, California's Governor Newsom got in on it, too. He posted this really weird message on X Twitter, kind of mimicking Trump's style.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
It was like, "Final warning, Donald Trump. Maybe the most important warning in history. Stop cheating, or California will redraw the maps," and so on. Lots of caps. Called himself the most loved and handsome governor. Our source called it a little ham-fisted. Maybe not the worst Trump parody, but still.
So what is all this? The Texas drama, the Newsom post, what does this kind of performative politics tell us? Beyond just the maths themselves, what's it say about the state of our electoral battles right now?
That's a great question. It feels like it's more about riling up the base and scoring points than maybe policy substance sometimes.
I think that's a big part of it. It's about crafting narratives, mobilizing support, maybe demonizing the other side. Spectacle often wins over substance these days, it seems.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. From political maps to, well, the integrity of government numbers. Because our sources have a really critical assessment of Donald Trump's pick for the new head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, E.J. Antoni. One headline just lays it out. Confirmed, E.J. Antoni is the Baghdad Bob of labor statistics. That's quite a statement.
Yeah, it is. It's a direct comparison, to the Iraqi official famous for completely inaccurate statements during the war. It signals deep concern about whether you can trust the numbers if Antoni is in charge. And his public record seems to fuel that concern. His ex-Twitter feed, described as chock full of political propaganda masquerading as serious economic analysis. Wow. And his CV apparently includes papers that are just, partisan nonsense.
Yeah.
Like, there's one paper he co-wrote last year claiming the U.S. has been in a recession since 2022. That claim got absolutely shredded by economists.
And not just from one side, right? The critiques came from the right as well.
Exactly. That's what's striking. You have Dave Hebert from the American Institute for Economic Research pointing out Antoni's inability to understand basic economics and how fast he's gone métier. Stan Vager, over at the American Enterprise Institute, said Antoni's work has elementary errors and nonsensical choices, that always biases findings in one partisan direction.
And Jessica Riedel at the Manhattan Institute called him the most error-filled of any think tank economist right now, said he's not seen in many D.C. policy circles. That's pretty damning.
It really is. And then Paul Krugman wrote a, quote, scorching takedown of Stephen Moore, who actually recommended Antony for the job while also claiming the job numbers are great. The irony there.
So a lot of red flags.
A lot. And maybe the most worrying thing mentioned is Antony's proposal, get this, to potentially not issue the jobs data at all for several months so they can be, quote, corrected, seemingly because he anticipates bad numbers.
That's alarming. So what happens now? This position, Commissioner of Labor Statistics, it needs Senate approval, right? 50 votes.
At least 50 senators, yes.
So given all this criticism, especially from conservative-leaning think tanks, is it possible this confirmation is just a bridge too far? Could the nomination get pulled?
It's certainly possible. I mean, the core insight here is just how crucial impartial government data is. If those figures become untrustworthy, it damages everything. Public trust, policy decisions, financial markets, everything relies on that data being credible. So, yeah, the Senate confirmation process here is incredibly important. Politicizing data is dangerous territory.
Okay, so from maps and numbers, let's pivot to the courts, because there are some equally intense battles happening there over fundamental rights. Our sources talk about the, quote, dire state of the Voting Rights Act, the VRA. Apparently, the Supreme Court is busy year-round now using the shadow docket those decisions made quickly without full arguments.
Right, emergency appeals and things like that.
And they're using it, and also reopening cases, to, quote, decimate what had been well-settled areas of the law.
And a key case to watch here is Louisiana v. Calais. The court has actually asked the parties to re-argue a major challenge involving Section 2 of the VRA. Section 2 is crucial. It prohibits voting practices that discriminate based on race. Politico even asked, will the VRA even make it to its 61st anniversary? It's turning 60 soon.
Wow, and this isn't happening in a vacuum, right? The VRA has already been weakened significantly.
Absolutely. You have to remember, back in 2013, the Roberts Court struck down Section 5 in Shelby v. Holder. Section 5 was the part that required states with a history of discrimination to get federal approval pre-clearance before changing voting laws.
That's when Justice Ginsburg wrote that famous dissent. It's like throwing away your umbrella in a rainstorm because you're not getting wet. Pointing at the irony that the law's success was being used to justify gutting it.
Exactly. And it's worth remembering, Section 5 wasn't some radical thing. It was reauthorized in 2006. Senate vote was 98-0, signed by George W. Bush.
98-0. And then after the Shelby ruling took away that pre-clearance, what happened?
Predictably, many of those previously covered states started passing laws that made it harder for minorities to vote. Voter ID laws, cutting polling places, reducing early voting days, even laws making it illegal to give water to people waiting in long lines, often in minority neighborhoods.
Okay, so back to Louisiana v. Calais. What are the specifics there?
So Louisiana drew a map in 2022 with only one majority black district. It got sued under Section 2 for diluting minority votes. A district court agreed it was unlawful. Okay, so then Louisiana redraws the map for 2024, this time with two majority-minority districts.
Trying to comply with Section 2, presumably?
Right. But then a group of white voters sued, saying that map violated the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause because it was drawn based on race. And remarkably, a three-judge federal court agreed and invalidated the 2024 map, too.
So they're caught between Section 2 of the VRA and the 14th Amendment.
That's what Louisiana argued on appeal to the Supreme Court, that they could satisfy both. Race-based action is allowed sometimes if there's a compelling reason, like remedying past discrimination under the VRA. But then SCOTUS threw a curveball. They asked a completely new question.
Which was?
Does the intentional creation of that second majority black district, even if it's to comply with the VRA, violate the 14th or 15th Amendments? And here's the really profound implication. If the court says yes, it could mean Section 2 of the VRA itself is unconstitutional.
Wow, that would basically gut the main remaining enforcement part of the Voting Rights Act.
Precisely. And it seems to fit into what some see as Chief Justice Roberts' long-term goal, or quest, as one source put it. His view seems to be that any government action based on race, even remedial action meant to fix discrimination, violates the Constitution's promise of race neutrality.
But race neutrality in a society that still deals with the effects of racial discrimination, that sounds problematic.
Right. It could implicate tons of other civil rights laws, too, not just voting. Rick Hansen, the election law expert, put it this way. A kind of race-neutral reading of the Constitution would potentially read out Congress's power to enact race-conscious remedies to protect minority voters.
So states could draw maps that clearly disadvantage minority voters, claim it's just partisan gerrymandering, not racial.
And the Roberts Court might just say, okay, too bad. That seems to be the loophole. If it's partisan, even if the effect is discriminatory, you might be out of luck in federal court.
And there's another threat too, right? Something about private lawsuits.
Yeah, the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that Section 2 doesn't allow individuals or groups a private right of action to sue. Only the federal government, the DOJ, can enforce it. Now, SCOTUS put that ruling on hold for now, but if they eventually agree with the Eighth Circuit...
Then Section 2 becomes basically useless if the administration in power doesn't want to enforce it. Like, say, a Trump administration's DOJ might have absolutely no interest in bringing those cases.
Exactly. It would render Section 2 a dead letter in praxis.
So the takeaway here is, this isn't just about one map in Louisiana. It's a fundamental challenge to using race-conscious policies to fix discrimination in voting. And the ripple effects could be huge across civil rights law.
That's the critical insight. Yes, it's a potential reinterpretation of equality itself, moving away from remedying historical wrongs towards a neutrality that might ignore ongoing disparities. Big stuff.
Really big stuff. Okay. Shifting again slightly within the legal world, let's talk about a specific court win for UCLA. It touches on government contracts and grants. Now, generally, the government has a lot of power to cancel these things, right?
More power than, say, a private company. They can cancel for default if you don't meet the terms or just for convenience, like budget cuts or the work isn't needed anymore.
But there are limits.
There are. The government can't act in bad faith. They need a clear justification. They have to follow a process, paperwork, time, and usually they have to pay termination costs. Now, our sources describe the current administration as, quote, heavy on arbitrariness and short on following the rules.
Which, ironically, might actually help universities fight back.
Exactly. It gives them plenty of room to go to court. And UCLA did just that. And pretty quickly, too. A judge ruled for the university, ordering the White House to, quote, uncancel at least 300 of the 800 grants it had frozen. This happened like hours after it was being discussed.
So that's significant. It shows there's some basis for fighting back in court, maybe even get a quick ruling.
Right. And it's worth noting the UC Regents apparently had an emergency meeting and weren't willing to accept what one source called a $1 billion bribe related to this.
So UCLA might be the school that really decides to hold the line here, not just give in.
It looks that way.
Yeah.
As for why UCLA was targeted, well, the first guess was maybe something about football season starting.
Yeah.
Seems flimsy. But a newer theory seems more plausible. Apparently, a student gave a graduation speech back in June saying some harsh and quite crude things about the administration. And that speech video has been circulating recently among, Meiji ad types on social media.
And the suggestion is?
The suggestion is if a certain figure who spent a lot of time on Meiji social media saw that video, it's exactly the kind of thing that would make him blow his top and maybe retaliate.
So the core insight from UCLA's win isn't just about grants. It's about the legal system potentially acting as a check on, arbitrary executive power, especially when it seems politically motivated. It offers some defense for academic freedom and free speech, even in this supercharged environment.
Precisely. Okay, shall we move to the electoral battlefield? Some interesting U.S. Senate races shaping up.
Let's do it. Where do we start?
How about Ohio? Sherrod Brown, the Democrat, is trying to win back the seat he lost last year to Senator Bernie Moreno. He'll be up against the appointed Senator John Husted, who apparently has a very mixed record and didn't really want the job. Brown's seen as the Dem with the best chance there.
Okay. And Senate Leader Schumer's busy recruiting elsewhere too, right? Maine.
Yeah, in Maine, the push is on Governor Janet Mills to challenge Senator Susan Collins, who's described as increasingly unpopular. Even if Mills says no, the analysis suggests Democrats have other viable options.
And Montana.
Schumer's also trying hard to get John Tester back in the game there. Tester's considered an even bigger get because, frankly, Democrats don't seem to have any other strong options in Montana besides the former senator.
Got it. What about Alabama?
Interesting race there. Senator Tuberville is running for governor, so his Senate seat is open. Representative Barry Moore is running for it. His stated reason, people deserve a Trump conservative. So the analysis basically says the only issue in that race will be who can be the Trumpiest of all.
Sounds about right for Alabama these days. Quick correction from our notes, by the way. Sandy Stimson, mentioned as a potential candidate, is apparently not a woman. Another middle-aged white man.
Okay, good catch.
Then there's Georgia. Senator John Ossoff is the target there, and former Tennessee football coach Derek Dooley is jumping in.
Dooley. He has a history of saying some pretty bizarre things, like comparing his football team to the Germans in World War II.
Yeah.
Not exactly a winning analogy.
No kidding. And the source note reminds us who the coach of the Nazis was. Yikes. And that field is crowded, right?
Very crowded. Couple of current representatives like Buddy Carter and Mike Collins.
Yeah. 5
unknowns. And potentially several other big names might jump in. Doug Collins, Brian Jack, Kelly Loeffler, Brett Raffensperger. And also State Senator Colton Moore, who our sources described using some very strong language regarding his views. Let's just say crazy pants racist was the phrase used.
Okay. Moving on to Iowa. Things seem interesting there, too. Senator Joni Ernst has made some missteps, apparently.
Yeah, and Iowa Democrats are smelling blood in the water. So you've got 2 athletes running. First, State Rep J.D. Scholten. He pitched independent league baseball for the Sioux City Explorers. He's 45. Fastball around 80 mph now. He's expected to really lean into baseball stories and analogies, play on that Iowa love for baseball.
Okay, an interesting angle. And the other athlete?
State Rep Josh Turek, he's a Paralympian, won gold twice in wheelchair basketball. His launch ad sounds incredibly powerful. Talks about developing spina bifida because his dad was exposed to Agent Orange in Vietnam. Talks about relying on the VA on government school lunch programs.
Wow.
And he directly contrasts Senator Bob Harkin, who championed those programs, with Senator Ernst. He argues she helped gut programs to give, quote, tax cuts for Elon Musk, while telling Iowans, quote, everyone is going to die. Pretty sharp contrast.
That sounds like a very compelling narrative. Okay, one more North Carolina.
Looks like that race is shaping up. RNC Chair Michael Whatley, who was handpicked by Donald Trump, versus former Democratic Governor Roy Cooper. Early polling, Emerson has Cooper up 6 points, 47-41. A partisan poll, admittedly, still has Cooper up 3, so being up 3 to 6 points this early in a purple state, that's a pretty good place to start for Cooper.
So looking across all these races, Ohio, Maine, Montana, Alabama, Georgia, Iowa, North Carolina, what's the bigger picture? How do these individual contests reflect the national mood or campaign strategies?
Well, I think the key takeaway is that while, yes, national trends matter, these races really highlight how important individual candidate stories and narratives are becoming. Whether it's former athletes' compelling personal history in Iowa, or the Trumpiest contest in Alabama, or a well-liked former governor in North Carolina, these unique elements seem increasingly central to how campaigns connect with voters, state by state. It's not just about party label anymore.
Right. Local stories, personal connections, they really cut through.
Absolutely. It shows that even in polarized times, candidates who can tell a genuine story, connect on specific issues, they can make a real difference.
Okay, let's wrap up the electoral battlefield with one specific race getting a lot of attention. Zohran Mamdani's mayoral candidacy somewhere. Our sources say he's polling very well indeed, just crushing the field, actually. This is happening despite, quote, much rending of garments and gnashing of teeth, and the media, particularly the New York Times, raking of muck from Mamdani's past.
Yeah, the numbers are pretty striking. CNN poll had Mamdani at 44%. The next closest was Andrew Cuomo, running as an independent at 25%. Then Republican Curtis Sliwa at 12%. And the incumbent Eric Adams, also independent, way down at 7%.
And that wasn't just one poll.
No, consistent across others, too. Wick poll had Mamdani at 39, Cuomo 21. Another poll from Zenith and Public Progress was almost identical to Siena, Mamdani 42, Cuomo 26. And Zenith even ran scenarios, like if everyone else drops out and it's just Mamdani versus Cuomo, Mamdani still wins 52-40.
Wow. And there are only, 84 days left? That's not much time to close a double-digit gap like that.
Not much time at all. So the question becomes, if Mamdani pulls off a big win, what conclusions will the Democratic establishment, the poobahs, draw? Our sources suggest 3 possibilities they might consider.
Okay, what are they?
First, maybe Democratic voters actually want someone who kind of talks like Donald Trump, promising to shake things up for the little guy, disrupt the system.
Interesting. Second,
maybe they just want someone young and social media savvy and charismatic, fresh face, different energy.
makes sense. And third,
And maybe the simplest or most cynical, depending on your view. Maybe Democratic voters just want someone, anyone, who's not a sleazeball.
Okay. So the insight here is Mamdani's potential success could signal a real shift in what Democratic voters are looking for, maybe prioritizing authenticity, challenging the status quo, personal integrity, over the usual stuff like party loyalty or long resumes.
Exactly. It could really influence how future Democratic campaigns think about messaging and candidate profiles. It suggests a hunger, perhaps, for a different kind of leader.
What a deep dive that was. Okay, so we've covered a lot. Intense political fights over redistricting, really profound challenges to civil rights law. We looked at government funding clashes, academic freedom issues, and some really fascinating Senate races, plus that mayoral race. The landscape, as always, it just keeps shifting, doesn't it?
It really does. And the main takeaway, hopefully for you listening, isn't just memorizing these specific facts or poll numbers. It's about seeing the connections, understanding how these different events link together. Critical thinking is just so key to navigating all this.
Absolutely. So, as you mull all this over, here's a final thought for you to consider. If a candidate like Zerfan Mamdani does find success by tapping into that desire to shake up the system for the benefit of the little guy, and at the same time, if the Supreme Court does keep pushing this idea of race neutrality in ways that dismantle longstanding civil rights tools, what comes next? What new forms of political action or legal strategies might emerge in response to those two powerful currents? What does the next version of shaking up the system even look like? Something to think about.